So my name is Andi Gergely, and I'm the chairperson of the European Union of Jewish Students, which is an umbrella organization for 35 national Jewish student unions in Europe and also in the former Soviet Union. I was asked to talk about these student unions. I figured I have 7 minutes, 12 seconds for each country, and then you'll get a good view. But in the end, I decided to bring some stories from different parts of Europe, and through these stories for you to understand a little better how colorful and how different Jewish student life is in the different parts of Europe. I'll start with France, because France has the biggest Jewish population in Europe. There are around 400,000 Jews living in France. All over France, most of them are in Paris. And there is a Jewish student union there, a very, very big and a great organization, the Union of Jewish Students of France, which all of them are volunteers. There are around 10 people, full-time volunteers in their Paris office. Whenever you go to their office, let it be 10 in the morning or 2 in the morning, they would be there, they would be holding meetings, and you would feel that they're actually planning the next French Revolution. And this group of students, just 2 months ago, won a lawsuit against Twitter. Now, all of us know what Twitter is, a multi-billion-dollar organization, let's say a company. They won a lawsuit because there were many anti-Semitic hashtags on Twitter, in the French Twitter, and they thought that this is not okay. So they managed to bring Twitter to court, and now Twitter have to enclose all the information about the users who were using this un bon juif, which means a good Jew, hashtags, and were saying really, really horrible things. I'll continue talking about the UK. UK has the second biggest Jewish population in Europe. The UJS, the Union of Jewish Students, which is their headquarters in London, also coordinating from London their entire campus activities. And there's one thing I want to include here. When we see the name of the panel, the campus as a crossroad, now it's important, I think, to mention that in Europe, except the UK, there are no campuses. There are universities, but students are not on campus. They don't live on campus. They go to university and they leave. So many of let's say the Jewish student life is also happening off campus, mainly in Jewish student organizations. But in the UK, there are campuses, and when there are campuses, there are a lot of things happening on campus. So, which we'll hear later on about BDS, the boycott of Israel, and academic boycott. Now, this is a really relevant and important question in the UK, and I'm really happy to say that with the lobbying of UJS, the Union of Jewish Students, they managed to prevent that the BDS law would pass on Oxford just 2 months ago, and this is a really great accomplishment. They were extensively lobbying, and this was also purely the work of a student-led Jewish union. But there are not only these huge organizations, there are also countries in Europe under the umbrella of EUJS with only 200 Jews. For instance, in Macedonia, there are only 200 Jews living in the country. This was the country with the highest rate of the victims in during the Shoah. 98% of the Macedonian Jews died in the Shoah. And there's a very small community which stayed there and which is working extremely hard. They were the ones who established the second biggest Holocaust memorial in Europe. And they are training and teaching teachers how to teach about genocide and how to teach genocide education. And although they are very small, they were really, really hard, and they just invited a group of Jewish students from all over Europe to come to Macedonia during next Yom HaShoah and to commemorate the Shoah together in Skopje. And I'm very happy that we're actually going to go together with the World Union of Jewish Students, who their representatives are also here. Now, I'll talk a little bit about Hungary. On one hand, because I'm from Hungary originally, and I'm also sure that many of you have a grandparent coming from Hungary, and it's a very, very exciting place. Last year, you may have heard the story. There was a former Nazi criminal named László Csatári who was found living in Budapest. He was sentenced to death in 1945 in Czechoslovakia for sending over 15,000 Jews to Auschwitz. He was sentenced to death, but he fled. He went to Canada, and he was living there until the 90s, when the Canadian authorities found out, and they expelled him from the country. He went back to Hungary, and he was living happily untouched for 15 years. The Simon Wiesenthal Center was also after us and was negotiating with the authorities to arrest him. But it didn't happen until The Sun, which is a British magazine, found out where he was living. The story went viral, and a delegation of EUJS under my leadership, we organized a demonstration in front of his house. His trial will start in 3 months. So about this, we are very excited. Why I also brought this story is to demonstrate and to show that this was not the Simon Wiesenthal Center or not any big organization who in the end reached to bring him to court, but it was a group of students with no significant organization behind who managed to bring the world's attention to this case. I see I have very limited time left, so I'll wrap up. But basically, what the very important thing here is, and in Europe, that there are not, how to say, Jewish students do a lot. They bring, EUJS has the voice in the United Nations. We bring every year delegations from all over Europe to raise their voice, to talk up against the defamation and demonization of Israel, and to touch upon the treatment of minorities. We lead European campaigns. We talk with the members of the European Parliament, with main institutions. Also, we train activists, and for instance, just next week after I leave Israel, I'll be in Amsterdam heading a seminar about the rise of political extremism in Europe, and many other topics. For instance, and the most important thing I think we have to mention is to bring together the students every year. And for the 30th year now, we've been organizing the Summer University, or maybe you have heard of it, the name Summer U, which is an event which brings together over 400 students every year from all over Europe and eventually also all over the world to discuss issues which are relevant to them, to connect, of course, to make lifelong friendships and to really face whatever is in front of them together. Last but not least, I have to say that I think it's very important that to notice that Europe is changing. The Soviet Union fell 24 years ago. Before that, in this time between the war and the communism, let's say, in Central Eastern Europe, there was no access to Judaism. My parents' generation had almost no access to, there were no really Jewish schools, there were no Jewish camps, youth movements, etc. And there was a generational gap. Now, my generation, we had the chance to be in Jewish schools, in Jewish youth movements, etc. And we really had the chance to develop our Jewish identity. And I think this is one of the reasons that this generation is capable of so much. And the other thing is, which is very, very significant, and it's a great difference between North America, between Israel and Europe. The fact is that these organizations are led by students. They don't work at a big NGO and make coffee and photocopies. This is not how they start, but they start on planning their own thing, obviously all the time with no means and no budget.
We have to wrap up. Andi, I think we're going to have time for questions.
Okay,
so we'll just move on. But thank you so much.